Welcome back to the program. I keep saying it night after night on this program. There's something just below the surface that we can't quite see, but it's starting to come into focus with poll after poll after poll showing Joe Biden is losing support with minority voters and people under 30. Here's the latest from ABC News.
And Biden seems to be struggling with key demographic groups that he would need to win and win big if he stands a chance of being reelected.
John, there is significant softness in the support for Joe Biden among core Democrats. In this poll, he's carrying black voters by 61 points. Well, that sounds like a lot, but he carried them by 84 points back in 2020. Latino voters, a very slight Biden edge in this poll, but it was a 21-point advantage in the exit polls back in 2020. And among younger voters under 30, we're actually seeing Trump with a slight edge. That was a big win for Biden last time around. It's particularly stark to see that difference among voters of color. Black voters under age 50, far less likely in this poll to say they're supporting Joe Biden than older black voters.
My next guest is the director of the DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and Family and the William E. Simon Senior Research Fellow, and now author of the book, Fight the Good Fight. Jay Richards, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's great to be with you.
I got to start with this. What are leftugees?
Leftugees, I actually got this term from Michael Schellenberger, who is, of course, ran for governor of California, but he's a longtime self-professed progressive who broke with the left over climate change and then gender ideology, and has started in the last year calling himself a leftugee. In other words, somebody that's always thought of himself on the left, but recognizes the radical departure on the left from sort of traditional democratic ideas from 1960s and doesn't know where to go. And in this book, which the subtitle is How an Alliance of Faith and Reason Can Win the Culture War, we're talking about this completely new coalition that at the moment isn't really a coalition. It's a lot of traditional conservatives, social conservatives, but also groups like minorities in the inner city, Tejanos on the border with Texas, and then a lot of people that thought of themselves on the left and then just are spitting mad over gender ideology and realizing, okay, wait, I think we need to rethink our political orientation here.
You know, I don't blame someone for being young and idealistic, having no experience, right? But what is it Churchill said? If you're not a liberal when you're 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative when you're 40, you have no brain. That I get it if you have no experience. On paper, the brochure sound it all sounds good, right? But then when you see it in practice and you know it doesn't work, I could see why people would become leftugees because they might have thought they had good intentions, right? I'll support. Yeah. I want to be one of the fair-minded good people, so I'll support XYZ. But then XYZ turns out to be a total disaster, and they go, "Well, why are we doing this?" Well, that's when you leave the left.
That is when you leave the left. And I think this is in some ways it's sort of happening more quickly than the process that Churchill talked about, which actually applied to me when I was a freshman in college. I was a leftist on economic issues because I thought that's what you needed to do to help the poor. In this case, though, yes, people's compassion has been weaponized against them so that they maybe initially fell for the trans argument. Well, we just want to be nice to the kind of unusual person. There are not very many of them. And then all of a sudden you're transing kids and you're telling them they need sterilizing drugs and surgery in order to become who they really are. It's very hard to cover that up. And then when you discover those people are also allied with the pro-Hamas protesters on college campuses, it's in some ways the radical left is showing its cards, showing its fangs, really, I think, in an unstrategic way. But I think it's also an opportunity for conservatives and free market limited government types to actually build new alliances and friendships with people that, honestly, 5 years ago, they would have thought we were bigots. Now they're thinking, okay, what do these people get that I did not get for so long? That's the kind of conversation I think that's happening in the country.
Do you think this is also a question of pendulums, that when we swing so far away from faith and values and people feel rudderless, they look for something that's going to give them structure, not an oppressive structure, but some structure, when you have these sort of structureless movements that say, well, you can be whatever gender you want and all these other things, and there is no God, and if there is, we can worship, we'll put up satanic, whatever it is, that when it feels like you are just out there floating, you look for something that seems more stable.
That kind of pendulum swing is actually what happens in culture. I mean, if you're a Christian and you look at the history of the church for 2,000 years, things don't just keep getting worse and worse, because if they do, civilization collapses and something more stable takes its place. What you get is either a pendulum swing or periods of decline, and then periods of renewal, cultural, social, and spiritual renewal. And I think we're just at the end of a cycle of the sort of a false elevation of the individual in terms of expressive individualism, where I can just do and be whatever I want to be. That's completely insane. And the thing that comes after that is a kind of radical totalitarianism. This is always how this goes. And so we're in this moment where we can renew, but we might also, some of us will want to listen to extremists on the other side. And so I think those of us that are concerned about the future of the American experiment, we want to forge an alliance that's broad enough that it can actually succeed politically, but it's not so homogenous that you're going to end up with some kind of new dictatorship. We don't want that.
Do you ever think that, look, I'm the outlier with this one. I think I grew up listening to heavy metal, punk rock, hardcore punk. I think I turned out okay. I'm a pretty stable suburban dad of 3 wonderful kids. Alice Cooper talks openly about his Christian faith, right? Gene Simmons sounds like a conservative on issues, but 50 years ago, probably conservatives back then were going, oh my God, right? What is going on television? But I think we have to be more trusting that people get what entertainment is, and that what they might like when they're 20 is not going to be who they are when they're 40, and that we grow up and we mature, and then, yes, we become more spiritual. Then when we see a guy who's got his face all painted up going, yeah, I'm a Christian too, you go, oh, he's not so bad.
Well, of course, Alice Cooper himself had a personal spiritual renewal sort of late in his career. But if that can happen for individuals, it can happen for countries and for civilizations and cultures as well. And I think that's, if you're a conservative or libertarian worried about the future, remember that. Remember that renewal, recasting, new alliances are possible. And I think we're actually at an inflection point right now.
I agree with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.
Over the weekend was May the 4th, right? And Mark Hamill stopped by the White House, but it wasn't just like, hey, I'm here. It's let me worship you. It was grotesque. I'm only going to give you 7 seconds of it.
Well, you know, I called him Mr. President. He said, you can call me Joe. And I said, can I call you Joe B1 Kenobi?
You're ruining my childhood. Up next, gutter and final rant.